area the last couple of days. Orange County, Riverside.
Being good.
Too much. That's why we need to build our local economy. We don't have to get on the road. Travel all of our business around. We just need
to 2 days. I'm leaving tomorrow night because I have a meeting at the desk tomorrow. I'll drive there and it'll be there Sunday and Monday.
Well, you know that call. Right. Yeah. He's working with a guy in Orange County. Cool.
Well, I'd like to just welcome you, Jay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out today. We're excited to talk about how to attract investors, angel investors, and there's nobody better to talk about that. Jay Goth is the founder and principal of Reds Health Capital. Much experience in this process, both sides of the play. And Jay is also the senior consultant with the SBEC, correct?
Right.
And then, in addition to that, newly appointed to the InSoCal Connect as the executive director. So we're really excited to have him. Get your questions ready, and let's go through the content. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Patrick. And one thing that he didn't mention is I'm also the curator of Startup Digest. And that's a great weekly email that goes out and tells everyone what's going on in the area. So if you go to startupdigest.com and just type in your email address, it'll let you into the site, and then you can pick. There's like 100 Startup Digests now around the world. So you can attend startup events in Africa, Asia, Europe, or Riverside County. So Riverside County has its own tab. You just click that you want to be part of Riverside County, and then you get emails every week about what's going on here. So co-working week was mentioned several times in the Startup Digest, and if you have an event that you want to attract entrepreneurs to, let me know and I'll put it in the digest.
So startup event?
Startupdigest.com. It's all one word, startupdigest.com. And then pick Riverside County, because you want the good stuff. You don't want San Diego or Orange County. .com. Startupdigest.com. And we have another event that we're going to start putting on. Beyond is going to be working with me on that, and that's called 1 Million Cups, which is really exciting. It's I've attended the last 3. They're held every Wednesday, and they do it at UC Irvine, and I'm going to do one out here in the Riverside County area. And basically, it's every Wednesday morning for about an hour, a bunch of entrepreneurs get together. And 2 entrepreneurs will present what they're working on, and then the rest of the people in the audience will just sit there and brainstorm with them on how to overcome challenges, what's good and what's bad. Really exciting stuff. So it's 1millioncups.com, and if you go to 1 Million Cups, you can see where all the local 1 Million Cups are, and pretty soon you'll see Riverside up there. And Beyond is going to be a co-founder of that with me. And we're going to do something a little different. We're actually going to videotape the presentations from the companies, as long as they allow us to. And then we'll actually edit them professionally. I have a professional group that's going to edit them down. And then the company can use that on their website. And we'll be putting it up on social media websites so that investors can start to see what we're doing here in Riverside County. So a lot of exciting stuff going on. And when I talk about streaming your video up to the web so that investors can see it, that's what I'm here to talk to you about today, is how to attract investors. And really, I've talked to lots of VCs. I'm a former investment banker, so I've dealt with a lot of institutional and high net worth investors. And really what they're looking for is a breakthrough. They're looking for something new. They don't want to see a better way to do something so much as they want to see a new way to do something. And, you know, we all think there's nothing new under the sun, but we thought of that before the internet came along, and they thought about that before the telephone came along. They thought about that before the telegraph came along. So there's always new evolutions coming, and innovation is the key to economic growth. And without money, none of our ideas are going to get off the ground, really. I mean, we can fund them as far as we can, but you can ask Milan or Paul or just about anyone in this room, without funding, we just can't take it to the next level. So there are a lot of things that investors want to see, but really the one thing I can tell you is if you want to attract an investor, you have to make your project exciting. It's got to get their juices flowing. It's got to be something that's either they think is going to change the world, or even better, it's got to be something that appeals to that investor. A lot of investors have a certain area that they focus on. So instead of going out to the world and saying, here's my great idea, and asking everyone in the world to invest, it's much better to spend a little time in advance identifying the investors who would have an interest in yours. So if you developed a new way to charge an electric vehicle in 2 minutes, then you'd want to contact Elon Musk at Tesla, right? But if you had a new way to create a search that would give you your search results before you even start typing on your keypad, then you probably want to talk to Sergey Brin at Google. So every investor has a different focus. And you really, in order to get their attention, you have to appeal to what they do. I have a friend up in San Francisco. His name's Brad Rotter. And he just sold his company, Air Patrol, for $30 million. It was his company. There were some other people who owned stock, but most of that money went to him. What's he doing with the money? He's investing it. Now, his company was in the mobile security space. So what he did is he had a special algorithm that would be able to detect every mobile device in a fenced area and allow communication from that device only under certain circumstances. Very cool technology. And he sold his company, and now he's looking for other companies. Well, what companies are he going to invest in? He's not going to invest in a recycling company, and he's not going to invest in an energy company. He's going to invest in a cybersecurity company. So if you had a cybersecurity solution like one of my clients up in Riverside does, then you could get in front of Brad, and there's a very good chance that he's going to take a good look at your company because it's exciting to him. It's not just another company that's looking for money. He wants to be able to bring his contacts, his relationships to the company to help them build value. Because one of the things investors are not looking for is just a place to park their money and hopefully get it back. They're really looking for places where they can put their money in and help that company build value around the company, and then they get a lot of money. So when you're thinking about how do I attract an investor, start keeping some of these thoughts in your mind. The first thing an investor is usually going to see from an entrepreneur is what's called an executive summary or a teaser. I call it a teaser because that's really what it is. You're teasing the guy into wanting to invest in. And the key to that is you want to tell them enough so that they're interested, but you don't want to tell them everything so that he makes his decision right on the spot. So when you develop a teaser, it should first of all be professional. I see a lot of people sending out teasers that are just a blank sheet of paper with a bunch of words on it. And I'll tell you right now, most investors are just going to toss it. If you have some pictures, preferably of your product or something related to what you do. So if you have a new exercise device and you don't have the prototype yet, put in a picture of somebody exercising or something so that they can kind of start connecting in their mind what you do with something that they understand that is in a graphic form, because people react to images a lot more emotionally than they do just words. And you can be William Shakespeare, and then people will react to your words, but they have to want to read your words. And investors are not very literate. They're more action-oriented. They want to see the pictures. They want to figure out how those pictures relate to the numbers at the bottom that tell them that they're going to get rich. And they want to have some kind of logical flow that shows them how they're going to get it. So an executive summary is kind of a work of art. It's not an easy thing to put together. It's not just a bunch of facts. It's a bunch of compelling reasons that somebody would want to learn more about your company. So you're trying to tease them into listening to you give them a pitch. So the executive summary is like the first thing that you would need to have to contact investors. The second thing would be an actual investor pitch. And there's all kinds of books on the subject of how to pitch investors. One of the best is by Guy Kawasaki, and he was one of the first people at Apple, and he helped develop a lot of the business development there, and then he retired, got rich, he started Garage.com, which was one of the very first kind of incubators out there, tech incubators. He's been through millions of investor pitches, and he knows what he's talking about. And he'll tell you, keep it to 10 to 12 slides and make it very, very simple. You don't want a lot of words on your slides. You want to make very big letters. And you're not trying to get them to read the slides. Really, what the slides are is just a way for you to keep track of where you are in your presentation. Like usually I'll have a PowerPoint, and my PowerPoint won't be something that I'm turning and reading to my audience. It would be something that keeps me on track so that I know what I'm talking about, so that I don't start talking about one thing and then the next thing you know I'm talking about something else. And it's very important that you do that because you have to keep your flow linear. If you don't, you're going to confuse your investor, and a confused investor is an investor who says no. One of the biggest problems I see entrepreneurs making when they make their pitch is they want to tell the investor everything about their company. And really, the only thing the investor wants to know is, number one, is there a problem that you're solving? What's out there that causes your company to be needed? So I was just having lunch with a lady who's developing biomarkers for pain. There are over 100 million people in the United States that have some kind of chronic pain condition. It could be TMJ, it could be fibromyalgia, it could be migraine headaches. Right now, there's no way to determine what level of pain they're at. You have to ask them, from 1 to 10, what's your pain? And she's coming up with a way that they can actually look at your biomarkers and tell what level of pain you're at. So now the doctor can actually prescribe a medication or a treatment that is geared towards your actual pain, not what you think it is. Because what's painful to me is probably not painful to my Iron Woman wife, because I don't understand how she does what she does, but it's a totally different subjective thing, and now she's objectifying data. So that's very cool. But how is she going to get somebody interested in that? Well, the best thing to do is find somebody who's either got a chronic pain condition or has somebody they know that has a chronic pain condition. So you don't want to tell them all about how biomarker profiling works, because that's too confusing. What you want to do is tell them what I just told you. If you're an investor and you had a pain condition and knew somebody who did, or just in general knew that humanity needed this, you'd be interested in hearing about the project. But if she were to tell you all the words that she puts into her slides, you just sit there, your eyes would glaze over, and you'd say, "Thank you very much. It was nice to meet you. I'll talk to you later." They lose the forest for the trees. So that's one of my top things, is keep it simple. And unfortunately, even after coaching session, when you stand up, all of a sudden you want to tell everyone everything about your babies. You really have to figure out how you can keep it simple and keep it to the facts that the investor wants to get. So, first of all, is there a problem? That means, is there a market? How big is the market? You know, if there's only 10 people in the entire United States that have a chronic pain condition, Letitia's just not going to have very much luck getting funding to her biomarker profile corporation. But since there's 100 million people out there, obviously there's a big market. So you want to quantify the market. You want to say how big the market is. So no matter what business you're in, you have to be able to drill down and find out how many potential customers are there for my product. And as soon as you've identified that A, there is this market, and B, this is the market opportunity, what the size of your universe is, the next thing you need to be able to tell them is how are you going to reach that market? Because even if you have 100 million people in chronic pain, they don't know that you exist. So how are you going to market to them? You know, with something in the pain area, you might partner up with, say, Johnson & Johnson and get a medicine out there or something. Do that. But if you're developing a desalinization plant, then you need to figure out who your market is and how you're going to reach them, and then you have to develop a plan for that, because the investor's going to say, well, how are you going to reach the people who would need a desalinization plant? So you would have to say, I've got this person who's very experienced in government affairs, and he knows all the city managers along the western coast who are going to need desalinization plants due to the drought. You know, so that makes sense to an investor. You just have to give them answers that make sense. If you don't have an answer that makes sense, don't lie, because they're going to find out. And the investment community, even though you would think that, you know, there's millions of investors around there, it's a very small community, and word gets around. Keeping your reputation in the investment community is very important. So I have investors ask me all the time, you know, well, what about this? And what I say is, I don't know, but I know somebody who knows, and I'll have them contact you. That's the better way than saying, I'll find out and get back to you, because that gives third-party credibility, plus they're hearing another voice. The more voices you have telling your investors about you, the better off you are. So that goes to a point that I want to touch on real briefly, and it's one of the things that I tell all my entrepreneurs. But if you're going to get into the business of finding investors, you need to network. You need to be at events like this. You need to be at the event we're going to have at the Temecula Valley Entrepreneurs Exchange tonight. You need to go to Tech Coast Venture Network in Orange County. You need to start getting out and talking to as many people as you can, because the more you network, the more you have a chance to get a referral to an investor. You probably won't meet the investor that's going to invest in your business at one of these networking events, but you may meet that investor's attorney or his accountant or somebody who got funding for a similar venture to be an investor. And I'll tell you, we had this venture capitalist come talk in Murrieta, Temecula, Riverside, and Corona, Eastern Illinois, Tim here with Sarah Ventures. And he said, right in the meeting, he said, I don't think I have ever funded a company that hasn't been referred to. And he's made dozens of investments. So your odds of getting an investor by just picking up the phone and calling them, or sending a blind email, or just meeting them on the street are very small. Your odds of getting an investment from an investor who hears about your investment from somebody that he trusts or knows are hundreds of times greater. So build your network. So you've shown them that there's a market, that there's market opportunity, how big that market opportunity is, how you're going to get there. Even if you've got the greatest thing in the world, even if you've got the new wind machine that's going to destroy all the existing wind machines, you need to be able to show them that there's nobody else out there with a similar project. So the next step is to identify your competition. The one of the kisses of death, there are many along the road to getting an investor. One of the kisses of death is telling people that you have no competition. It's amazing how many people think they don't have any competition, but the fact of the matter is, there is somebody out there who's thinking the same thing you are. And so what you need to do is show to the investor that you thought of this. You don't have to identify every single competitor. They don't expect that. But they expect that you've done your own due diligence and gone out there and figured out who's doing something similar, who might be able to knock you off. And the bigger your competitors are, the more nervous they get. If you've got a new idea and there are a bunch of other startups doing the same idea, your chances, if you get the funding and put together the right team, are very good that you'll be able to do it and get bought by a bigger guy. But if you're developing something and Google's developing the same type of thing, they're not going to invest. So doing your competitive analysis will tell you what your odds of success are as well as the investor. So you've got the layout for that. Then the biggest question they have is, who's going to make this happen? That's you. It should be you. You shouldn't have someone else speaking about your company. You shouldn't be showing them a video about what your company can be. Even if you're inventing the next race car and you've got Lee Iacocca as your chairman, you're the one making it happen. And bringing Lee Iacocca to tell the investors about it is not as good as you telling them about it yourself. It's your idea, your passion, you're the one making it happen. Now, having a stellar team around you is incredibly important, because there's an old axiom in the investment world: we bet on the jockey, not the horse. The horse is the company, the horse is the technology, but the management team is the jockey. And unless you have a good team that can actually execute, or you don't have to have a complete team, as long as you have a couple of major players and you've identified the holes in your team and you've admitted to the investor right up front, you know, we don't have the right marketing person yet on our team, but we've got a great financial guy, we've got a great operations guy, and I'm the visionary, then they'll say, okay, I can help you find that guy. But if you say, it's me, I do everything, and you know, all I need to do is hire a couple of administrative assistants and this company's going to be going, you're out of luck. So team is very important. And a lot of times your team doesn't have to be all your managers. It could be an advisory board. So, for example, I've got a company that I started, and I don't have a lot of people on my management team, but I've brought a lot of advisory people from the industry to my team. And that validates what I'm doing, because these guys are well known in the industry, and they would not be on my team unless they thought that I had something that was supposed to have. So that's another way to build out your management team. The other thing is, you usually don't have a lot of money when you're getting started, and you say, how do I attract team members to me if I don't have any money? Well, put them on your advisory board and tell them that there's an opportunity to come into a management position once you get funding. But you can't get funding without them on your team. So it's a good way to get people to join you without having to give them a lot of money up front. And then, you know, you've got to have a financial model that works. So if you're not familiar with finances, we have some great resources here in the Valley that can help you. Specifically, SCORE has some really, really good executives. SCORE is the Service Corps of Retired Executives. And these are guys who have been there and done that. Some of them are, I mean, I'm just super impressed. They've got PhDs or You know, there's one, Michael, I don't remember his last name right now, but his mentor was Sam Walton. And when you can get a guy who studied at the feet of a giant like that to help you with your business, your chances of succeeding are a lot higher. So the SCORE people are very good at putting together financial models. So Keith Larson, I take a lot of my TriTech SBDC clients to Keith because I'm more of a strategic level advisor, and those guys will get down in the trenches with you and they'll figure out everything from marketing to finance. There's like dozens of SCORE counselors in this area. So if one of them can't help you, he knows somebody who can. So when you put together your financial model, what you want to do is impress the investor with the fact that they can make a lot of money doing it. They know the odds of you being successful are probably slim, but they're going to want to see a pretty good growth curve. And traditionally, we call it a hockey stick. It goes like this for the first couple of years, and then all of a sudden you get traction, and then boom, you go up like that. And so, you know, if you have a model that'll scale, and you actually can show them a hockey stick, that's great. But what I tell companies is, if you don't have that kind of growth, don't try and fit your financial model to meet the investor's needs. Make your financial model make sense to you. It should be part of your plan. You should have it all figured out ahead of time. So that even though it's not like this, if it's like this, even plateauing a little bit, it'll resonate with them that they've given it some thought and this is their model. Instead of seeing this and then reading your plan and going, these things don't match up. I don't see how this works. So the financial model is really important, and that usually goes in one corner of the executive summary. I try and keep it really simple. I'll just say gross revenues for the next 5 years, expenses, and gross profit. You can go down to net profit if you want, but don't make it too detailed. I see a lot of people trying to cram a really detailed spreadsheet into their executive summary, and it'll just confuse them. And like I say, keep it simple. So you've got all that done. So you've got your executive summary. Out of that, you've defined your pitch deck, your PowerPoint presentation, or whatever it is. The other thing you're going to need when you talk to an investor is an actual business plan. And people go, I've actually seen a very good speaker who has said, raise money without a business plan. What do you have a business plan for? All you need is a slide deck. But I think it's good to have a business plan for one reason. Number one, you need to know what you're going to do. So by writing a plan, you actually figure out your business. The other thing is the investor can see how you think. And that's really the key to having a business plan, is not having a plan, because everyone knows your plan's going to change when you start actually doing something. But if you have a plan and you've thought everything out, you've got your competitive analysis, and you've got your financial models, and you've got your market, research, then the investor can actually see how you think, and there's a much better chance that they'll invest in you if they think that you're a smart person who has thought business through, rather than some guy with all flash showing you some wonderful slides and a big hockey stick. But when you start diving into it, you realize that he really doesn't know what he's talking about. So the business plan is the hard part. It's very difficult. I've written a lot of them, and they're never easy. I just finished one that's 85 pages. And people say, how big should my business plan be? I say as much as it takes to figure out your business. It could be a 5-page business plan. If you've got a simple business and you don't, it could be 5 pages, or it could be 85. It really depends. And I've kind of worn myself out talking. So what I'd like to do is make this interactive and get questions, be able to figure things out together.
Well, as you know, I'm working on a business plan and a summary too. And I'm not alone, of course,
Right.
because otherwise I would not be able to do it. But one of our helpers, which happens to be my wife,
Right.
she did the editing for my first book, my math book, and she's really good. We can trust her. Unfortunately, she does not understand the business or the technical writing of something. And so it's always like if she was a second to Shakespeare, you know what I'm saying? And I was wondering if through you, maybe if you could meet with her, sometimes you should give
I'm not a teacher. I'm more of a guy.
to make her to understand a little bit which direction, because that's the most positive people that we have. And
Well, I would recommend that you read The Art of the Start, that she reads The Art of the Start and listen to a true expert who talks. That's Guy Kawasaki's book. And that talks about how to start a company, how to build a plan, and how to think like a business and what you need to know. And that could give her a lot of direction. So I would recommend it.
this is start.
Art of the Start.
Oh, the art of the start.
A-R-T of the Start by Guy Kawasaki.
Okay,
I really recommend that.
thank you.
But see, if she's simply an editor or a writer, you can't have her writing your plan.
That's what we're beginning to understand.
You need to have another person on your team that will write that. So you need to attract a marketing person or a business development person into your team, because you're the technical person, and she may be a great writer, but if she doesn't understand what she's writing, you need to bring in the person who understands.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that goes towards the team again,
Yeah.
rather than just advisor.
Well, no, you can have an advisor actually do some work with you. That can be part of what their advisory is. And it doesn't mean that just because they're not getting paid today doesn't mean that if you get some funding that you can't give them some money out of the funding and pay them later. They have to buy into your concept, obviously, and believe you're going to actually get money.
So do you think they'd be willing to work kind of like a contingency, or is it be down the road, like when the funding?
Listen,
I'm
building my plastics plant. I've got a developer up in Paris who has designed the entire plant. He's done the architectural drawings. He's gone to the city for preliminary approval. All of this, I've never paid him anything. If they believe that you're going to do something, they're going to buy in and they're going to work with you. And they're not going to ask for money today. They're going to say, just make sure you remember me later on. If they trust you, they'll do that. If they don't know you that well, they're going to say, sign this document that says you're going to pay me if you get funding. But it's all contingent. You don't owe them anything. I have a written, non-binding letter of intent with the developer that when I get the project funded, I'm going to buy the building from him. And, we understand each other, but I've never told him that it was a guarantee, that it was a lock, that I knew I was going to raise the money. I said, I think I have a good chance at it, and I really like what I'm doing, but there are no guarantees. I told him that in our very first meeting. And when he calls me up and says, how's it going? I say, it's going, I'm still working on it, but he's not upset with me or anything else because I was honest up front. So that's one thing that you really have to remember is people are going to hold you to what you say. So no matter how excited you are about your project, I knew a guy in Orange County that he raised unbelievable amounts of money, but now he can't raise anything because nobody believes him anymore because he was always telling everybody this is guaranteed, it's going to happen. You know, we've already got this and this and this. And he'd get people to invest based on what he said, but now nobody believes him. Yes?
My question is on all the, like the crowdfunding, and that aspect. Obviously, there's like angel investors on the website. You can go and look at other investors, and then obviously there's Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and there's all that aspect. So, how do you, as an entrepreneur, really trying to figure out maybe what's the best route for you? If you should find a local investor as opposed to doing, a crowdfunding. If it's a social message, obviously that's what that is. If people want to be a part of something that's going to do good, so I was wondering, maybe what the criteria are, what's the best way to go, different things.
Right, and that's really the answer to your own question is, it really depends on what you're doing. So if you have a social thing, or if you have a consumer-related thing that people would want to buy, like, my kind of, I always talk about the Pebble watch. This company came out of nowhere and said, we're going to make a smartwatch that you can wear on your wrist. It'll have a little computer in it. It'll do all kinds of things. And they put it on Kickstarter, and they wanted to raise, I forget how much, I think it was like $600,000. They wanted to raise quite a bit of money because they needed to go into production on a watch. So it costs a little money to get all this stuff done. They raised over $10 million for that on Kickstarter by pre-selling the watch because it's something people wanted to buy. Now, if you're developing a cure for cancer, even though there's a social impact, I don't think, Kickstarter would be the way to go. It would be to go to pharmaceutical venture capitalists, and they're going to be very stringent, and that's tough. That's a tough thing. It's probably a bad example. But it really depends on what your product is, or what your service is, or what you're trying to deliver. And then you have to decide. So Kickstarter, Indiegogo, all the what we call crowdfunding. There's Great Belly or something like
There's
that.
one that I think Google's going in. They're doing the one also. So.
Well, all of these are not allowed to be actual investor related. These are all services or donations. Indiegogo is mostly donations. Kickstarter is mostly products or services. And so you can't actually sell investors on the crowdfunding platform yet. They do have crowdfunding for accredited investors. So that's AngelList and the other companies. Gust is another one, and there's EquityNet. There are a number of micro ventures. There are a number of places where you can put your project up on the web, and accredited investors can look at it and invest in you if they want, and that's been pretty successful. But ultimately, you still need the executive summary, the business plan, and a pitch deck. Because the first thing I get increase from EquityNet and AngelList all the time is I'm listed as an investor, and the first thing I see is that one pager, and that's what tells me whether or not I want to even look at more information. Then we have the Tech Coast Angels, so that's a local angel group that you can actually go pitch. They have a pitch competition coming up this fall, and they're signing up companies to go into their program right now. And basically what they do is they'll take like 60 or 80 companies and have you get up and give an elevator pitch real quick. They'll narrow it down to 30 companies, and then they'll do a couple of workshops, then they'll narrow it down to 20 companies, and then they'll have their pitch competition. And then from their pitch competition, the winner gets a chance to actually pitch the Tech Coast Angels. But I think we've been in it for a couple of months. And then the odds of getting an investment from Tech Coast Angels is very small. I think they fund, 6% of the people that actually get a chance to pitch get funded. And there are hundreds of companies that apply that never get a chance to pitch. So when you think about it, your odds are like 1 in 1,000. So there are a lot of great ideas out there. There are not a lot of great investors. The other way to go is early stage venture capital. Seed funds have been growing by leaps and bounds. I'm happy to announce that we have a seed fund forming here in the Temecula Valley area. It's being run by a gentleman, and I'm not going to put his name out there because we're streaming and I don't want him to get a million phone calls in case somebody's watching the webcast. But he's a very successful entrepreneur. He's young, and he has already started and sold 3 companies. And he's starting his own investment fund here in the Temecula Valley area. He's going to have a professional fund manager running it. He's already got commitments from some very big investors. So we will have one fund through my InsoCal Connect organization. I hope to start a seed fund next year. So that we'll have that. So we are starting to put some capital resources to work here in the Temecula Valley area. Any other questions on that?
Yes, I have. Mine comes from a different viewpoint. Kind of throw this one at you. We're a nonprofit in the area. Went from just being a food pantry to a food pantry thrift store now to an outreach center.
Right.
We need to do more. How do I find that person? Every bit of this area wants to support the less fortunate. I mean, they want to have something good. How do I get past the gatekeeper to get to that person that wants to be? How do I find it?
That's a good question. What I would do, and I'm InsoCal Connect's a nonprofit. I'm in the process of fundraising for that as well. So I run into the same challenges. What I would do is try and look into, say, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great resource because it'll tell you what people in your local area are doing. And a lot of times you can find out who the decision maker is in an organization through LinkedIn. And then I would start trying to contact them directly. You're still going to go get a gatekeeper, but if you start talking to them, and I used to raise money for a living, and the first thing I'd always did would be the gatekeeper. So I would make
be their best friend.
I would make the big gatekeeper my friend. So instead of treating them like an obstacle, I treat them as an ally. So I try to find out a little bit more about them, and then I'll try and find their hot button, what would get them to want to help me. So that's one way to do it. The other one is to collaborate with other nonprofits in the area and find out, what's working for them and some of the people that they're involved with. You can look on the boards of some of the other nonprofits, and you'll find out who's already giving back to the community, and that's a good way to do it. So there's no easy way, unfortunately. I wish I could just give you a list and say, all these people, they'll show up.
Yeah.
But congratulations on your growth.
Thank you. Well, and
I've been hearing.
can I brag? We're the nonprofit of the area.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I do like your executive. We had to do more, and we have changed our thing from giving a handout to giving a hand up. And we do want to do more programs, but I think we do talk too much about it. We got to make it short.
And find out, like I love instead of a handout, a hand up. I love that concept. So I think that would resonate with the people who are, not looking for money just to give something to somebody. So I think I would elaborate on that a little bit more, just not telling them how it works, but telling them why it works. It's the old teach a man to fish deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a very powerful message. So that would be my headline, would be something along those lines. And then try and stay out of the details and stay more into the benefits. And I would try to, you're going to be selling. Ultimately, you're selling something. So if you don't think you're a good salesman, you need to get a book on salesmanship. So I recommend a book that was written in 1931. It's called How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Selling. And it's written by a guy named Frank Bettcher, Boettcher. I've read it probably 100 times. It's not a very big book. But he really gets to the heart of the matter about selling. And it's never about what you want. It's about what the person wants. How can you find out what that person wants and how can you help them get it? That's what it is. So when you're talking to a potential donor, it's not about what you want from them. It's about what are you looking for from me? What can I do to help you? I'm helping all these underprivileged people and we're helping them get a leg up. But how can that benefit you? So I just became the director of InsoCal Connect 2.5 weeks ago. And I've been averaging 5 to 6 meetings a day. Every meeting, I'm in fundraising mode. I've not asked for $1 yet. All I'm doing is going out and saying, okay, Greg Lee with the City of Riverside, what can Connect do for you? Okay, Eric Bloom with University of Redlands, what can Connect do for you? Okay, Bruce Coleman at City of Marietta, what can Connect do for you? I'm trying to find out, before I go to them and say, I want your money, I need to find out what I can provide to them. And if I can't provide anything to them, why would I go ask them for money? Just be knocking my head against the wall. I've done that enough in my life. So find out what they want. You know, you've got to ask questions. And that's the biggest problem most entrepreneurs have is they go out there and it's all out. They're telling their story. When actually it should be more in. Tell me your story. How did you get to where you are? Yeah, 2 ears, 1 mouth. But investors love to tell you about themselves. And if you give them an opportunity, they'll tell you exactly how to sell. But you got to give them the opportunity. Most people don't. They just keep talking. And they talk themselves right out of the sale. And what I found, a sales technique that I found that I was sold, I was working in a boiler room, telemarketing for dollars. And I was taught a very interesting method of getting to yes. And it's called 3 yeses and ask for the order. So what you do is you ask a question that you know they're going to have to agree with. So back then we were selling electricity. It sounds crazy, but we were selling people on investing in electricity. So we would say, you know, people pay too much for electricity. Wouldn't you agree with me that if you had a choice between paying more for electricity or paying less, that you'd pay less? You get them to say yes. You ask them a question where they have to say yes or they're a complete idiot, right? Then you ask them a second question. Well, if you could choose between electricity that's produced by coal plants or electricity that's produced by clean geothermal energy, wouldn't you agree that geothermal energy would be better than coal energy? Yes. Great. Now, could you see how a company that was offering clean energy at a lower price would be a very big benefit to the country, and that this company could be successful, and if you were to put your money into it, that you could reap a big reward? Are they going to say no? No. They're going to say yes. So now you've got 3 yeses. You ask for the order. You say, okay, Mr. Jones, I think that you should put $100,000 into this company today. I'm going to have FedEx come to your door tomorrow and pick up your check. What are they going to say? They're going to say, no, no, I didn't agree to invest. And you're going to say, well, let me get this straight. You agree that people would pay less. You agree that they'd rather have free energy. And you agree that the company is going to do well. Why wouldn't you invest? Now,
Sadly,
Rob,
you actually don't get yourself steered into a certain direction. You have certain questions of your own.
right? So they bring up their objections. So the first thing you do is you handle an objection with a question. You don't, he says, well, you know, I agree with all that, but how do I know that you're going to be able to get that electricity? So you say, well, let me get this straight. You're saying that even though the green energy is better and if we can offer cheaper, people would buy it, you're not sure we can get that energy. Is that correct? So you're not confronting the objection. You're distilling the question. Yes, that's correct. Great. Well, we have a deal with Calpine up in the Northern California that's going to give us all the energy at a fixed price. So can you agree that if we've got a fixed contract for the energy, we're going to be able to get as much as we need? So I've answered his objection, and now he's fishing for another one. So I'm going to let him do 2 or 3 objections, but after that I'm going to say, look, Mr. Jones, you can ask me questions all day long. The bottom line is, you're either going to be an investor or not. And from your conversation, you're telling me that you really don't want to invest in our company. And if that's the case, then I don't want to bother you anymore, and I'm not going to waste my time. And at that point, I make the decision, let's just terminate the call. And I've done that with people. And they either call me back and say, you know, I thought about what you had to say, and it really does sound like a good idea. Or they were never going to invest anyway. And I just cut my losses.
It's qualified.
But if they answer those first 3 questions right, they're coming down the road with you. If they don't, then you're never going to get anywhere. So you never pitch somebody who doesn't want to hear your story.
Choose to let this one also.
Great, nice. Any other questions? Yes.
Yes, thank you. So I'd like to go back to something you said earlier about when you were talking about Brad, your friend,
Yeah.
involved with security.
Cybersecurity.
Yeah. I don't know if I told you before, but I was a test flight technician in the French Air Force, the company. And I have a wonderful patent, which, by the way, Mayor Julian thanked me for doing this, which is an anti-hijack system. And well, the US PCO agreed if we had that before 9/11, we would not have that 9/11, so it's probably good. So hearing what you're saying, well, I'm suddenly interested to find these people and see if I can propose this and see.
See, here's the problem. You have a patent, you have an idea, but you don't have a company.
Correct.
He's an investor. He doesn't want to go into business with somebody to develop your patent and make you both money. He wants to invest in a company. So if you have a patent and you think it would be worthwhile, you need to attract some team members, build a plan, build a pitch deck, build the executive summary, and then take it to investors. But you can't bring a patent to somebody and say, look at my patent, don't you want to invest? They're going to invest in what? You know, I can't invest in an idea, I can invest in a company.
Okay.
You could go to a company and say, hey, look at my idea, would you like to license it? That's how you can monetize your patent.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Well, I want to thank you all for coming.
Well, thank
Hopefully
you.
this has been helpful.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm available just about anywhere. You can find me on LinkedIn at Jay Goth. I'm with TriTech SBDC in SoCal Connect. There are all kinds of ways to reach me. I'd be happy to talk to you if you have any further questions.
Thank you.
Book, I raised myself.
How I raised myself from failure to success in selling by Frank Betcher. And the way he got everyone to remember his last name is You Bet Your Life. He's
I
a
thought you were going to say Napoleon Hill.
No, Napoleon Hill's a great writer and talks about how to, use your mind to create success. And I read his Think and Grow Rich probably 200 times. But that's another topic.
Cool.
All right, well, good luck.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. And get more coffee, I'll put myself to sleep.
Wasn't too hard, Jay.
I don't know, I need to make more. I've got a short day today, I got a 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock conference call.
You can get back to work.
We had a great meeting today at the Marriott Innovation Center. We had UCR came down, and we had all the tenants there. They talked about their businesses. We had the city manager. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank
You want to
you.
send me an email?
Okay,
Send me an email with some of what you're doing.
okay,
And then what I will do is match you up with who I think could best help you.
okay.
Because I have a lot of resources out here.
I know you do.
So that's why.
I need to put you with the right person.
I know, that's why I was asking, if I don't want to just, be like, oh, yeah, I can help, that might not be. Okay,
Right?
okay,
Okay, I'll be happy to help you.
thank you very much.
Yeah.
So again, for me to add some more people to my team or advisors, you have any contacts to work with?
That gentleman in Corona, or Orange, I was talking about. He'd be a good guy to talk to because he has a lot of people like that. So did you send me an email about that?
I did.
Send me an email request so I can remember. And then I'll put you in touch with him. I can't remember who it is right now, but he just called me. He called me last week.
I should have references for you.
Looking for team members. You talked about a guy in Orange. GP Condon is his name.
GP Condon?
CONGDON. GP.
So how someone takes this opportunity? Thank you for working with them back down in
Yeah.
the company.
Judy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I just had the idea, but and besides the idea, I don't know how
That's
to
good to partner up with a
one branch to another.
business person. So that was good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, I'll keep working with him.
Yeah,
We'll figure this thing out.
good. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.